Revealed, the incredible truth about ultra-processed food and how it transformed lives forever. The sun cast a golden glow over Maplewood, a small Midwestern town where chatter and laughter usually flowed like the strong coffee at Jerry's diner. But Jane, a 34-year-old single mother working double shifts as a waitress and a housekeeper, felt a constant weight on her chest. Each day was a juggling act between two demanding jobs and caring for her kids, Emma and Jake. How did it come to this? She often wondered as she hugged their tired bodies close at night, the bittersweet scent of cheap, processed meals lingering in her kitchen. They once flourished in love and laughter, but lately, their lively home pulsed with an underlying strain. As Jane scooped another serving of pre-packaged noodles into plastic bowls, she couldn't ignore that hollow ache in her gut. The local grocery store's colorful walls were filled with sugary cereals and neon snacks, while fresh produce seemed too pricey, like a treasure only the fortunate could afford. "I'm just trying to feed my kids," she whispered to herself, feeling the relentless tug of financial despair. One blistering afternoon, a visit to the town's Dr. Old Man McCarthy, who had seen it all, changed everything. "Jane," he said, concern etching lines deeper into his weathered face, "these foods you're relying on, they aren't just convenient. They're dangerous for the kids." His words hit her like a slap. The idea that their meals could be harming Emma and Jake sent chills down her spine. She stared into Jake's innocent eyes, once filled with mischief, now clouded with lethargy. It was a moment of stark realization. Was she sacrificing their health for the sake of cheapness? The next day, Jane stood before the produce aisle, courage fizzing inside her like soda pop. She grabbed apples, avocados, and leafy greens, determined to shift their diets away from ultra-processed foods. But her excitement waned as she saw dollar signs floating next to fresh ingredients. A heartbreaking moment snapped like a twig underfoot. "How can this be?" she murmured, clutching a bag of wilted spinach. "What did we do to deserve this struggle?" Yet, instead of retreating, Jane ignited a fire within the community. Conversations turned into meetings, meetings flowed into shared experiences, and slowly but surely, their once silent struggles erupted into a cause. The dingy diner buzzed with newfound energy, neighbors rallied around her, armed with growing knowledge about nutrition and healthy eating. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the town gathered for the community meeting, the air was thick with palpable hope and determination. Jane looked around, faces she had served countless times now glimmered with promise. They were fighting back together. But beneath her pride, a pot of anxiety simmered. Would this spark bring lasting change? When the meeting concluded, applause echoed through the diner like a long-awaited promise. But Jane felt a stab of uncertainty. Could they truly find the strength to redefine their lives? The question hung heavy in the air, whispering insistently, lingering like the heartache of old habits trapped in routines. The journey was only beginning, and Jane's heart beat with both trepidation and the stirring winds of change. The following week brought a crispness to the air, a refreshing sign that autumn was approaching. Jane awoke each morning with renewed resolve, the sun casting rays through the thin curtains of their small home, illuminating the faded photographs of better days. She felt a surge of hope each time she stepped into her kitchen, where a little basket on the counter filled with fresh produce now greeted her instead of empty wrappers and takeout boxes. As she prepared oatmeal adorned with diced fruits for breakfast, Emma and Jake stumbled into the kitchen, sleep still clinging to their eyes. Jane smiled, letting the aroma of cinnamon twist around them like a warm hug. "Breakfast is ready," she called, and their faces brightened. This was a moment, however small, that felt monumental. Later that day, Jane decided to put her plans into action. "If we're going to do this," she told Emma and Jake as they sat at the kitchen table, "we need to learn to cook together." The kids looked intrigued, a flicker of excitement lighting up their faces. "How about we make dinner tonight?" she suggested. They gathered in the kitchen, laughter spilling out like sugar from an open jar. Jane watched as Emma eagerly chopped vegetables, while Jake tried to balance the measuring cups without spilling. They were a team, and with every clank of pots and pans, she felt a shift in their family dynamic. Positivity filled spaces that had once been filled with guilt and frustration. They experimented with recipes, turning what had felt like an uphill battle into a joyful adventure. Their first dish, a colorful stir-fry, filled the house with tantalizing aromas. When they sat down to eat, a sense of accomplishment washed over them. As they tucked into their meal, Jane's heart swelled with pride. "See how delicious real food can be?" she asked, grinning widely. Emma nodded, full cheeks bulging. But just as the warmth of their bonding settled in, Jane's phone buzzed, pulling her back to the reality of the battle unfolding outside the kitchen. A text from the community group reminded her of the upcoming nutrition fair she had organized. It was a chance for people in Maplewood to grasp the importance of wholesome eating together. Walking into the fair days later, the energy was electric. Tables overflowed with vibrant fruits and vegetables, and people of all ages moved around, curious and hungry for knowledge. Jane's heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety, so many faces she recognized, all searching for answers just like she had. As she took her place behind a booth showcasing simple recipes and budget-friendly tips, she saw a familiar face, Old Man McCarthy. His smile radiated pride, and he clapped her on the back. "You're doing something special, Jane." His words were a balm to her worries. The fair flourished, but as people chatted, she felt a twinge of doubt creeping back in. What if this was just a momentary fling? What if they couldn't sustain these changes? Yet, amidst her uncertainty, she noticed a particular group huddled around her booth, captivated by the dishes and colorful charts. Families who were struggling too, just as she had been. A spark lit in Jane's heart. Perhaps this thriving community was the answer to her worries. Now, with the scent of fresh herbs and spices still hanging in the air, Jane whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." But as she scanned the crowd, she sensed deeper challenges looming on the horizon, ones she wasn't prepared for. What transformations awaited in this interconnected journey toward health? Would they have the strength to push through obstacles that were yet to emerge? As Jane's heart drummed with anticipation, she knew one thing: the fight for a better future had only just begun. The vibrant atmosphere of the nutrition fair buzzed with life. Jane watched as families gathered around her booth, drawn to the bright banners and colorful displays. She felt a mix of pride and responsibility. This was more than just a fair, it was a lifeline for many, including herself. But doubt still clung to the edges of her mind. How could she really make a lasting impact amidst the distractions of everyday life? As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, she turned to a table filled with samples of fresh salsa. "Who wants to try this?" she called out, her voice laced with enthusiasm. A small group of children rushed over, their eyes wide with curiosity. Jane offered them chips and watched as they dipped them into the vibrant concoction, their smiles exploding as they tasted the fresh tomatoes and zip of lime. "This is awesome!" one little boy exclaimed, crumbs collecting around his mouth. His excitement was contagious, and Jane felt her heart lift. She caught Emma and Jake glancing her way from a distance, their faces beaming with pride. They were helping at another booth, sharing their newly learned skills about cooking healthy meals with their peers. It made Jane's heart swell with joy. In that moment, she realized this was not just about herself anymore, it was about building a healthier community together. As people moved freely, Jane noticed a hesitant woman standing to the side. She was clutching a pamphlet tightly in her hands, her gaze darting nervously from the bustling crowd to the display of food. Jane's instinct kicked in. "Hi there. Would you like to learn how to make this salsa?" she asked, smiling warmly. The woman hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "I've never cooked before, I wouldn't know where to start." Jane's heart twisted at the vulnerability in her voice. "That's okay. We all start somewhere. Cooking can be simple and fun. Let me show you." With gentle encouragement, she led the woman to a nearby table where they began dismantling the fear of the unknown ingredient by ingredient. The woman's brow unfurrowed with each skill Jane shared. Their small group became an oasis of support, laughter growing as they chopped and stirred the fresh ingredients together. Others began to watch, drawn in by the infectious energy. But just as the moment felt elevated, a loud crash broke the rhythm. A nearby table piled with produce toppled over, sending apples rolling across the fairground. Gasps filled the air as people scrambled to gather the fallen fruit. Jane felt her heart drop. The joyful atmosphere seemed to dim momentarily. "No!" Jane exclaimed, rushing over with Emma and Jake, both of them helping to pick up the apples. As they scooped them off the ground, Jane couldn't shake the feeling that this was a reflection of life's unpredictability. One moment, they were thriving, and the next, chaos seemed to reign. When the last apple was set back on its table, the crowd erupted in laughter, realizing the situation was somewhat comical. Jane felt a mixture of relief and dread. Could her fragile beginning withstand such chaos? Yet, as she looked around, Jane saw the twinkle in people's eyes, the connections growing through shared experiences. Even amid the confusion, a sense of community felt more powerful than ever. This was their moment to connect, to rebuild together. As the fair started to wind down, Jane felt an overwhelming sense of hope wash over her. They might not have all the answers, but they were on a beautiful journey. She turned to Emma and Jake, who wore their aprons proudly, covered in bits of salsa splatters. "We did good today," she said, beaming. But as they cleaned up, Jane noticed a figure lurking at the edge of the fair, someone she thought she recognized. The worry lapped at her like waves against a shore. What was he doing here? And what could this mean for their future? Little did Jane know that her commitment to changing their lives would attract all sorts of attention. And not all of it would be positive. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the fairground. Jane's heart raced. The figure at the edge was unmistakable. Tom, her ex-partner and the very person she'd hoped never to see again. Every memory of their past tugged at her, a mix of nostalgia and unresolved pain. "Mom, is everything okay?" Emma asked, her voice laced with concern. "Yeah, just, give me a minute," Jane managed, her gaze locked on Tom. He stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Memories invaded her thoughts like a tidal wave, their shared dreams, the arguments, and, ultimately, the silence that broke their bond. Hadn't she moved on? Couldn't she just focus on the fair and the incredible moments they had created together? But now, all of it felt compromised. The warmth and connection she cultivated with the community seemed fragile against the weight of past regrets. She waved Emma and Jake off, forcing a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, Jane." Tom's voice cut through the noise, sending a chill through her. She took a deep breath, extending a tentative hand forward as he closed the distance between them. "What are you doing here?" The question slipped out sharper than she intended. Memories of his disinterest in her passions raced through her mind, making her defensive. "I heard about the fair," Tom said, a hint of pride seeping through his uncertainty. "I came to see what you've been doing." A part of her wanted to beam with pride, to share the success of the event, the laughter of the families gathered, and how their efforts were building something significant. But the history between them quickly dimmed that light. "It's great to see you," Jane managed, her voice shaking slightly. "But this is a community event. It's about bringing people together, you know?" He nodded, eyeing the bustling food booths and laughter echoing around them. "Are you happy, Jane? Really?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with implications. Could she truly answer that? Happiness seemed like a distant star when caught in the storm of emotions swirling around her. I'm trying," she replied softly, feeling vulnerable all of a sudden. Just then, the little boy from earlier ran past, still sticky from salsa, giggling as he tumbled into Jake. It drew a smile from Jane, a breath of hope that there was so much more to life than her past with Tom. But she couldn't help feeling torn. "Maybe we could talk later, after the fair?" Tom suggested, hopeful yet cautious. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Would she let him back into her life? The decision felt enormous, yet she couldn't ignore the urgency of her commitment to the community now. She had people relying on her, and the past could unravel everything she had built. Let us see how it goes, Jane replied, non-committal. She wanted to focus on the present, but part of her was curious about what he might want to say. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the main stage as a group of teenagers shouted excitedly. "Look!" One shouted, pointing to a banner that flew high above the fairground. It read, "Ultra-processed food dangers, are you aware?" Jane's heart raced again. The topic felt too close for comfort. How could she counter misinformation that could unravel everything they had been working towards? A deep sense of urgency surged through her. As she looked back at Tom, uncertainty clouded her mind. Would he be part of her journey towards spreading awareness, or would he become another obstacle? "Mom!" Emma's voice called from across the fair. "You've got to see this." Jane turned to follow her daughter. The pulsing energy of excitement reignited her spirit. But just as she began to move away from Tom, she saw him pull out his phone, snapping a picture of the banner with a frown that suggested he didn't understand the community's fight. Could the past and the future intertwine in ways that were both inspiring and dangerous? As Jane strolled toward her family, a storm brewed inside her. She knew she had to confront what loomed ahead, while keeping her focus on building a healthier life for all. But the real question loomed: who would stand with her when the truth started to unravel? Emma pulled Jane through the crowd, her excitement palpable. "Look at this!" she exclaimed, pointing to a booth laden with fresh fruits and vegetables, vibrant colors bursting from every corner. Local farmers had set up their stands with produce that called to Jane like a siren song. "Wow, Emma! This looks amazing," Jane said, her heart lifting. She loved seeing the community rally together, and these are the moments she lived for: the connections, the shared joy. But her thoughts kept darting back to Tom. That question he asked, "Are you happy?" echoed in her mind, making her pulse quicken. The fair was thriving, yet the shadow of him lingered, tainting the joy of the event. She wanted to shake off the negativity, to lose herself in the laughter and music, but there he was, a figure in her periphery, indistinct yet looming. "Can we try the apple cider?" Jake chimed in, tugging at her sleeve, pulling her from her reverie. His enthusiasm worked like a bomb, and she nodded, feeling the temporary weight of complacency lift slightly. They moved toward the cider stand, the aroma of spices and sweetness wafting through the air, coaxing her senses alive. As they waited in line, she felt a wave of gratitude for her children. Each smile they shared brought warmth, an antidote to the chill Tom's presence had left behind. "Do you remember the last fair we went to, Mom?" Emma asked, her eyes shining. "You let me get those giant cotton candies." "Yes, and you were covered in sugar." "It took a whole week to scrub that off the car seats," Jane laughed, the memory washing over her like sunlight seeping through clouds. But as the laughter faded, her heart twisted. Would he bring up those things she had fought so hard to move past? Did he still see her as the frazzled woman trying to keep a family and community together? Or worse, did he think she was so eager to show off this fair because of him? A commotion broke out near the main stage again. The voices of the teenagers rang louder, their laughter mingling with shouts and apprehension. Jane turned just in time to see them gathered around the banner, now with a microphone in hand. "Who wants to join our challenge?" one teen shouted. "Let us see who can make the most delicious meal without any processed foods. We'll showcase the real stuff." Heat surged through Jane. This was it. This was what she had fought for, the chance to educate and inspire. With renewed purpose, she strode toward the stage, her heart racing with anticipation. "Mom! Can we join?" Emma squeaked, stars in her eyes. "Of course. I'll sign us up," Jane replied, the idea blooming in her mind. But just then, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd. "That's ridiculous. You want to get people to listen to that nonsense." It was Tom, standing at the edge of their makeshift stage with a scowl. Jane's breath caught in her throat. The moment hung between them, a tangible pull that yanked at old scars. How could he reject what had brought warmth back into her life? Don't you see? This is about caring for ourselves and each other. She shot back, not wanting to feel defensive but unable to help herself. He held his ground, unwavering. Caring doesn't mean filling our plates with fear. You can't change how people eat. Fire ignited within Jane. This was more than just food, it was about their lives, the lives of everyone in the community. The stakes felt higher than ever. As she glanced at her children, determination hardened her resolve. Then let us talk. What she didn't expect was for Tom to consider her words seriously. There was silence, and for a heartbeat, an understanding flickered in his eyes. Maybe this wasn't just about food. Maybe, just maybe, they were about to start unraveling something far more profound together. After the fair then? He asked, a spark of hope buried in uncertainty. Jane hesitated, the question hanging heavy, tearing at her desire for clarity. Could they really find a way to transform past hurts into something meaningful? The answer felt just out of reach, but that tantalizing promise of possibility shimmered, beckoning her onward. As they prepared to raise their voices in unity, Jane's heart beat wildly. This could be a beginning. Or a mistake. Which would it be? The energy around the fair grew electric as Jane and Tom stood face to face, their families swirling around them like the summer breeze. The laughter and music faded into a faint hum, everything seemed to vanish, leaving just them. Tom's eyes bore a mixture of skepticism and something Jane dared to hope was curiosity. After the fair, huh? Jane echoed, her heart pounding like a drum. She took a deep breath, drawing strength from the very air around them. Okay. Let us talk. But it can't just be an argument. This matters, what we feed ourselves, how we live. Tom shifted, glancing at the kids playing nearby. Just as quickly, he looked back at Jane, his expression scrunching with uncertainty. What are you really after, Jane? A question that pierced her right through. I want to find common ground, she replied softly, the truth unfurling like a fragile flower. Not just for us, but for them. Jane gestured towards Emma and Jake, who were bouncing around, eyes wide with excitement over a juggling act nearby, blissfully unaware of the tension between their parents. Let us see what we can come up with. Together, Tom relented, the harsh edge in his voice dulling slightly. It wasn't full acceptance, but there was a step forward. Suddenly, Emma raced back to them, her cheeks flushed with exhilaration. Mom! Can we do the challenge now? Please? She practically bounced on her feet, still brimming with the euphoria of the fair. Jane's heart swelled at her daughter's enthusiasm. Absolutely. But we need a game plan. Tom seemed to soften just a bit as he relented. Okay, but it has to be fair, serious. Fair? You mean like slicing those apples straight from the orchard? Jane smirked, shaking her head playfully. Fine. But how about we research together? I'll even let you in on my secret skills. At that, Tom cracked a small smile, a glimpse of the man she once loved so dearly. Deal. As kids from all around gathered, the stage buzzed with life. They signed up as a team, each of them stepping forward with fresh ideas, the conversation weaving deeper in the swell of laughter and friendly banter. For a moment, Jane felt the air change. The heaviness that had clung to her since that fateful conversation, the one that knocked her off balance, lightened ever so slightly. The crowd began to cheer as another group presented their challenge, laughter mixing with anticipation. But Jane couldn't ignore the surge of uncertainty flooding her mind. Was this truly the start of something new, or merely a fleeting moment of hope before the walls came crashing back down? As Emma grabbed her hand, dragging her towards the market stalls, Jane's heart hung between excitement and dread. Could they turn this chance into something real? As they moved to gather ingredients for their dish, Tom brushed against her, their shoulders nearly touching. A rush of warmth shot through Jane, making her next move feel pivotal. Let us not just stop at this challenge, she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes fixed straight ahead. Let us make it a project for the town. Tom's brow furrowed in contemplation, the idea settling between them. A community meal, he mused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. We could invite everybody. The urgency twisted in her chest at that thought. A feast not just filled with good food, but filled with the essence of community togetherness. But would Tom be truly on board? In her excitement, was she rushing things again? Definitely, she confirmed, excitement bubbling at the idea. But for real this time? Could they bridge the chasm that had grown between them through food, connection, and shared purpose? The weight of the past still loomed large. Just then, Jake called out, glancing back at them, his little voice cutting through the tension, "Mom. Are you coming?" With one final glance at Tom, the question hung heavy in the air. Would stepping into this new chapter mark a rebirth for them both, or would it lead down a path they weren't truly ready to walk? Jane took a deep breath, opening herself to whatever came next. Was there still a chance? As they all began to move toward the cooking area, anticipation swirled ahead of them, but uncertainty trailed behind. The path ahead could lead to healing or heartbreak, and only time would tell what flavor this journey would bring. The cooking area was buzzing. Tables were set up, and colorful ingredients spilled out from crates and baskets. Emma and Jake darted among the stalls, their laughter punctuating the warm afternoon sun. Jane felt herself getting swept up in their energy. Could this really be a turning point for her family? Let us start with something local, Tom suggested, scanning the tables. How about those sweet tomatoes? It was a small suggestion, a way to bridge the gap between their old life and whatever came next. Sounds perfect, Jane replied, pulling her daughter closer. It was in these small steps that hope blossomed. They moved to pick up the tomatoes together, their hands brushing against each other again, triggering an electric pulse. What else should we add? Emma asked, eyes sparkling with possibilities. Garlic. Jake proclaimed, joyfully bouncing on his feet. And maybe some onions. Tom chuckled, the sound ringing out as he lowered himself to meet his son's enthusiasm. You've got a good palate, buddy. What about herbs? We could use some basil. As they deliberated over the ingredients, Jane felt a camaraderie begin to form. It was subtle, but it was there. Conversations bounced around them, laughter echoed, and for the first time in a long while, she felt part of something bigger. What do you think? Tom turned to her, his brow knitted in thought. If we're making this community meal a reality, we need something to tie it all together. You're right, she nodded, her heart racing. How about we share a story? Something personal that connects us to the food? He blinked, surprise showing on his face for just a moment. Have you thought about sharing about us? The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Sharing their journey, their challenges, their transformation not just from food, but from life. Did they dare go there openly? Jane looked into Tom's eyes, searching for a glimmer of understanding. Maybe. But only if we're ready. We've been through so much, and sharing it might bring us closer or push us apart. Tom exhaled slowly, his expression shifting. The tension from earlier seemed to melt slightly, replaced with something softer, a connection, or maybe a new understanding. We can start small, he suggested, his tone careful. And if it gets complicated, we'll deal with that later. Okay, Jane whispered, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Maybe this was the moment they could show their kids what it meant to be vulnerable, to build something out of honesty, rather than hiding behind old wounds. As they filled their basket with ingredients, the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of gold. There was a magic in the air, the kind that held promises and whispered hope. But just as she began to believe that they could really create something beautiful together, a commotion broke out near the main stage. It was loud, chaotic, and soon drew all their attention away from their little plans. Mom! Look! Emma shouted, her little finger pointing towards the stage where a group of competitors was arguing. The tension was palpable, the emotions raw, and it sent a ripple of unease down Jane's spine. Tom's gaze turned serious as he observed the chaos. What's happening there? Jane swallowed, anxiety creeping back in. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding? But what if it's not? Tom's voice was steady but concerned. As they moved closer to the commotion, Jane felt a tug in her chest. This wasn't part of their plan, and yet it felt important. Was this discord a reflection of their struggles too? Could they really overcome not just their own conflicts but the chaos around them? The evening might not just be about food after all. With hearts racing, they headed towards the stage, where something unexpected awaited them. Would they rise to the challenge, pulling together in the face of adversity? Or would the cracks begin to show once again? The closer they got to the stage, the louder the shouts became. A group of competitors faced off, their expressions twisted in frustration, fists clenched. Jane could see the audience shifting, a mix of curiosity and concern evident on their faces. It felt like a bubble about to burst, and she couldn't help but feel the tension tightening her own chest. What's all this about? She murmured, more to herself than to Tom, who was already scanning the crowd, trying to catch snippets of conversation. Maybe they're just having a disagreement about rules or something, Tom replied, but his voice had a certain edge. It carried his own unease. Emma and Jake tugged at Jane, eyes wide as they tried to better perceive the situation. Mom, are they going to fight? Emma asked, her innocence breaking Jane's heart. No, sweetheart, Jane reassured her, though she wasn't sure herself. They're just frustrated. Everyone wants to do their best. Just then, a woman in the middle of the commotion gestured wildly. You can't just change the rules last minute. That's not how this works. Her voice pierced the air, raw and trembling. It set off a wave of murmurs in the crowd. Didn't they agree to the rules before? A man in the back of the crowd shouted. His voice was thick with disbelief, shared by many others who hadn't anticipated such an outburst. Nearby, Jane noticed a young man with his hands in his hair. This isn't the kind of competition that's supposed to break us apart. He shouted, his voice more of a plea than a challenge. Jane exchanged a glance with Tom, who looked troubled. It's more than just a cooking competition to them, he spoke quietly, almost reverently, his brow furrowing deeper. It's about community, pride, unity. Suddenly, another competitor stepped forward, voice steady but filled with emotion. We all started here. We've all struggled and fought for this moment. How can we let our anger ruin what we built together? Her tone cut through the chaos like a knife through butter. Jane's heart thudded hard. This was a pivotal moment. She felt the words of that competitor stirring something deep within her. What's happening here is like what we've been through, she said to Tom, pointing subtly towards the stage. We have been battling our own frustrations. Maybe they just need to be reminded of why they started. Tom nodded, something shifting in his expression. Then maybe we need to remind ourselves too. They couldn't just stand back. This was a community meal, and the essence of it was coming apart at the seams. She felt a surge of urgency. Let's get involved. Are you sure? Tom's brows raised slightly, worry masking his features. I am. Jane said, determination clawing its way forward. She couldn't let this chance slip away. They could bridge their own gaps and maybe help mend theirs too. All right, he nodded, resolve lining his jaw. Rallying her courage, Jane stepped forward. Excuse me. She called out, her voice trembling but growing steadier with each syllable. Can everyone listen for a second? We're all here because we care about the same thing: food, community, family. She breathed deeply, heart racing as she pushed past her fears. A hush fell over the crowd, a miracle amidst the chaos. All eyes turned towards her, and she felt the weight of their expectation. Remember why we came together. It was never just about who cooks best, but about how we share our stories and experiences through food. Tom stepped beside her, a silent anchor of support. As the audience began to absorb her words, Jane felt a flood of hope. The arguing competitors paused, confusion giving way to consideration. Could her voice really change things? In that moment of silence, the tension shifted. Would they forgive and mend their frayed bonds? Would their family do the same? But before answers could emerge, a loud crash erupted from the side of the stage, prompting gasps. Jane's stomach knotted again as she turned to see what was happening. Had they opened a door, only to have it slammed shut by chaos once more? The uncertainty hung in the air, making each breath feel heavy. What lay ahead for them and this community teetering on the edge? The crash echoed like a thunderclap, startling the crowd into a gripping silence that was thicker than the air in the sweltering heat. Jane's heart raced, and she instinctively reached for Tom's arm. He tightened his grip around her hand, anchoring her in that moment of chaos. From the shadows of the stage, a table collapsed, sending utensils and half-prepared dishes scattering across the ground like fallen soldiers. A few competitors jumped back, faces twisted in shock. The woman with the fierce voice, meanwhile, darted toward the mess, quickly scanning to see what had happened. "Is everyone all right?" she called out, her voice slicing through the confusion. The weight of her concern pulled at Jane's heart, reminding her of the vulnerability inherent in competition and in life. The young man, who had once been so emotional, rushed to help gather the fallen pots and pans, determination etched on his face. "Come on, we've worked too hard for this," he shouted to the others, instilling a sense of urgency within the group. Seeing their willingness to pull together sparked an ember of hope in Jane's chest. She felt the words bubbling up again, almost begging to be spoken. "This is what it's all about," she interjected, her voice strong enough to break through the haze of anxiety. The group, still reeling from the sudden upheaval, turned towards her again. Sometimes it feels easier to tear each other down than to lift each other up. But look. She waved her arms toward the disarray on the stage. "We have the chance right now to show what our passion for food really means. We can clean this together, just as we can mend our hearts." Tom nodded, inspired by her words. "We're in this together," he yelled out, his voice booming, resonating deep with the crowd. The crowd began to ripple with movement, competitors and onlookers alike rushing toward the remnants of the fallen table. Jane watched, a swell of emotion rising within her. The chaos that had felt so overwhelming moments before was now transforming into a collective effort. People were bending down together, laughing nervously, exchanging apologies, and exchanging quick glances, both worried and relieved. As the competitors worked side by side, Jane felt a rush of pride. They were not just fighting for themselves anymore, they were fighting for each other, for the very essence of community that was meant to be fostered here. Of all things, food had united them in a way she had never anticipated. The thought brought warmth to her heart. But just as quickly, her mind flickered back to her own fractured family, the arguments, the silences, the longing for connection that danced right at the edge of her grasp. "Look!" someone shouted, drawing her back to the moment. Jane turned to see a young woman holding up a beautifully decorated cake, somehow unscathed from the chaos. "This is what it's all about, right? Sharing joy." The crowd erupted, laughter spilling forth, filling the air with camaraderie. It was the reminder they all needed. Jane felt an overwhelming sense of hope, a gentle push urging her to think of her own family. But beneath that swell of happiness, her heart still ached. The dessert symbolized more than just deliciousness. It stood for healing, a way to mend not only the broken table, but also those broken relationships she had yet to confront. And then, amidst the laughter and the teamwork, Jane's gaze flickered to Tom, who had been unusually quiet, a storm brewing behind his eyes as he watched the scene unfold. His expression shifted from pride to something deeper, sharper. "Jane," he whispered, leaning in close. "There's something you need to know." As the sound of togetherness filled the air, her breath caught in her throat. What was it that Tom wanted to share? What could possibly be waiting behind the walls of this moment, ready to change everything? The atmosphere around the fair pulsed with camaraderie and celebration, yet Jane felt a weight settling in the pit of her stomach. Tom's words hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. The laughter from the crowd faded into a background hum as she turned to him, searching his gaze for clues. What is it? She asked, feeling a mix of dread and hope. What do you need to tell me? Tom glanced around, ensuring they wouldn't be overheard, then leaned closer. I've been thinking about everything about us and the kids. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the confidence he had shown in the crowd moments ago. I want to be part of this with you. The kids deserve it. Her heart raced, but a cloud of uncertainty loomed over her thoughts. What does that mean, exactly? I mean, he sighed, running a hand through his hair, I want us to work together not just for the kids, but for ourselves too. We need to confront our past so we can build a better future. We can't let the old wounds keep us from what we could create. A rush of emotions swept through Jane. Could Tom truly mean that? Did he understand the depths of what they needed to address? I'm trying, Tom. Really trying to focus on building something new for our kids, for this community. He took a deep breath, grounding himself, his expression turning serious. Then let us not let our old disagreements pull us apart anymore. This fair our kids, this is what I've been missing. I want to be part of all of it, and I want you to know I'm committed. Hope fluttered tentatively in her chest. Are you saying you want to help with the meal? To be involved in the community? Exactly, he replied, a spark igniting in his eyes. I want to help make it something special. We could co-host a cooking class or plan meals together for the families in need. I want to share everything we've learned. Wow, Jane said, her voice barely audible. She could barely wrap her head around it. You'd really be on board for something like that? Yeah, Tom nodded firmly. For Emma and Jake. And for us. We have to show them that breaking bread can fix more than just hunger. Before she could respond, the crowd erupted into cheers as the fallen table was righted, and the spirit of community rekindled. Laughter erupted as someone proposed an impromptu competition. Let us have a dish-off right here. Jane smiled, feeling a sense of belonging swell within her. The idea of cooking for the community together triggered something deep, a sense of resolution. Then let's do it. Together. We can show them how to cook with love, how nourishment can heal, she said, her heart racing. Tom smiled back, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a glimmer of genuine connection between them. For the first time, she knew they could face their past together. Perhaps the lingering doubts of earlier days would fade alongside the remnants of their old life. Perhaps their shared goals would let them grow into something new. Just then, Emma and Jake returned, each holding up colorful, handmade aprons, one bright pink, one vibrant blue, and Joshua, the boy with sticky hands from before, waving his brightly decorated cupcake. Look, Mom. We want to be like you. It was a shining moment that ignited warmth in Jane's heart. This was the sanctuary she had fought for, a nest of love and hope for her children. The fair had turned into something more than a mere competition. It was transforming into a beacon of possibility. All right. Who's ready to cook? She shouted to the crowd, smiling brightly, her worries washed away. The clamor of excited voices filled the air. As they began gathering ingredients for their dish-off, Jane felt the threads of her life intertwine in a way that made her heart full. They were not just overcoming fear, they were stepping into their greatest strength, holding hands, and binding the pieces of their lives together. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the fairgrounds as they orchestrated their plans, embracing the challenges ahead. That night, as families gathered around tables to share meals and stories, Jane knew she had stepped into a new chapter. With every chopped vegetable, every shared story, they stitched a tapestry of community together. This was about healing, about food, and about family. The moment she had dreaded had turned into the moment she had longed for. Embracing the future felt exhilarating now. Life opened up before her in a spectrum of possibilities, and she swore she could almost taste the flavor of hope. Together, she whispered to herself, the words solidified in her heart. As Jane's laughter mingled with the bustling crowd, she felt the warmth of connection enveloping her, an anchor to all they had faced and to all that lay ahead. They were finally ready to rise together. Don't wait another second. Now it's your turn to be part of this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss exclusive stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread this message of transformation far and wide. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. I want to hear from you. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Spread the hope, because only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's make a difference together.